Welcome to Pod of Jake, a podcast hosted by Jake. You can go to zerofjake.com to learn more about Jake and everything that he does, and feel free to email him anytime at jake@blogofjake.com or message him at zerofjake on Twitter or at Jake on Warpcast. Anyway, we thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, please consider giving Pod of Jake a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate your support.
Thank you, Camila, for coming on the podcast and taking the time. I really appreciate it. It's great to be able to finally connect, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. You are the founder and CEO of The Defiant, a crypto media outlet. You are also the author of The Infinite Machine, book all about the origin story of Ethereum. And you've spent most of your career, all of your career really, as sort of a financial journalist in more recent years, last several years, sort of covering crypto increasingly and basically exclusively. And you've always wanted to be a writer, I understand, from like the very early days of sort of like growing up, and obviously, ended up going down that path at first, nothing to do with crypto, nothing to do with finance even, and then eventually sort of finding your niche in finance and then more specifically in crypto. So it's a really interesting story, and I would love, for those who aren't familiar with you and aren't familiar with your story or even the Defiant, to hear your story from as early as you're willing to start to where you are today, and maybe you could talk through some of the decisions you made along the way.
Yeah, happy to. And thank you so much for having me. So, as early as I'm willing to go. So, the earliest is I was born in Santiago, Chile. And yeah, like you said, I always wanted to be a writer, and decided that the practical way of doing that was through journalism. And so studied journalism, got a job at uh, Chile's biggest newspaper, El Mercurio. And from there, I decided to apply to a master's in the US because I decided I wanted to work in a big US-based media company. So I saw myself, I don't know, sitting at El Mercurio, and there were people who had been there for 20 years. Like, once you get there, you don't really move very much to other places. So I did not see that for myself, just like at this one spot in Chile. So that's why I decided to try and apply to the top journalism schools in the US. So I got accepted at Medill in Northwestern, a great journalism school. And so I went there, and from there, I decided to take the like business journalism track, which is something that I had never really been very interested in. I'm just very kind of, I had been in just covering politics and that sort of thing at El Mercurio. And in my family, it was always like my brother, the one that was always kind of watching the market and stocks, and he was always like very entrepreneurial, but I wasn't kind of the business minded one in the family. But then I was, at this very expensive school, and I said, I need to make the most out of it and learn something that I'm not familiar with, and maybe it would be a good tool for me going forward. So that's why I decided to take the business journalism concentration, and I actually ended up loving it. I discovered that telling stories through the lens of money and markets is just like a very objective way of looking at the world. Like the market is just such an efficient way of interpreting what thousands of people make of a certain company or a certain government. And I just thought that was super interesting. So I decided to apply to an internship at Bloomberg News. And just decided to just fully go for being a financial journalist. I also thought, not many journalists really understand finance and business, and so I thought that was a good opportunity for me, since I learned that I actually enjoy it. So yeah, I went for the Bloomberg News internship, and this was in New York at the HQ. I was interning at the emerging markets team there, and I don't know, a funny story from that time is that all through my internship, I thought, I got pretty good feedback. And so at the end of the class, I mean, the reason you do that internship is to get hired. And so at the end of the class, all the interns were getting offers or rejections. And I had no reason to think that I wouldn't get hired. But when I got the call, they told me that they weren't offering me a job. And so I was pretty devastated. Like, I had taken out a loan to go to like this really expensive journalism school. And the whole point of it was to be hired at a big US media company. And basically, after the internship, my visa would run out and I would have to go back to Chile with nothing, except with a huge debt. So I was like, I am not taking no for an answer. Plus, I knew that I had done a good job. So I went to my team leader and told him, you guys made the wrong decision. I should be hired. I did really good work for you. Like, what happened? And so he said, it wasn't my decision, blah, blah, but I'll go back and talk to them and see what's up. And he managed to get me like an additional 3-month test period to see if they would hire me after that. And they did. So that was like an extended, very long interview process to get hired at Bloomberg. And after that, I was with them for 8 years. And they many times told me like, we're so glad that I ended up actually hiring you. But yeah, so I guess like lesson there is like, don't take no for an answer so easily. And from there, I was in the markets, like in various markets teams at Bloomberg. So emerging markets team in New York. Then I was sent to Argentina, to Buenos Aires, to cover markets there. Just like fascinating time. I absolutely loved my time there, from like professionally and personally. And that's actually what got me interested in crypto. So this was back in, I was there between 2012 and 2016. And in 2013, there was this like crypto bull market. And I had never heard about Bitcoin or anything. And I saw that people in Argentina were using Bitcoin to protect their savings against inflation and currency controls. And I thought that was super interesting. So I wrote my first Bitcoin story back in 2013. And then I was always just interested in the space and just kept tabs on it. And then after Argentina, I covered European stocks from Madrid with Bloomberg. And then I was asked to join the Markets Live team in New York, which was like a blog with macro markets updates. And so at that time, this was 2017, crypto was in another bull market, and I had more freedom to write about whatever was interesting to me, because this was like a real-time macro markets blog. So I started writing about crypto, and my editors noticed, and they said, you know what, like, we actually do need more crypto coverage. So I became one of the or the first journalist at Bloomberg News to really cover crypto in a day-to-day basis. I became kind of the main Bloomberg News journalist covering crypto in 2017. And then by the end of 2017, I was like completely fascinated with the space. Like I just thought the stories, the people, the market, it was just so interesting to cover. And I decided to find a book to write. That's because that had always been a goal of mine, to at some point write a book. And I had, I always had that in the back of my mind, just like was keeping an eye out for a potential story that could be book worthy. And it covering crypto, I said, there has to be a book here. And I gave it some thought and decided that Ethereum was the best story to tell, because there were a few books about Bitcoin at the time, but nothing on Ethereum. And of course, Ethereum is, the biggest uh, smart contracts platform. It was pushing blockchain forward, and it had driven a lot of the hype of the 2017 bull market with ICOs. So it just felt like there had to be a place where people could understand the story behind it. And there was nothing at the time. So decided to write a book on Ethereum and pitched that end of 2017. And then early 2018, I got a deal with HarperCollins. And yeah, all through 2018, I was at Bloomberg and writing my book, and I pitched to Bloomberg to have me lead a crypto team, which they weren't, they didn't want to give crypto that much focus. And so between that and the fact that I wanted to really focus on finishing my book and felt that, I was ready for something different after 8 years in the same place, in January of 2019, I left Bloomberg to finish my book, and then in June of 2019, I started The Defiant, which was supposed to be just like a hobby or like a side hustle. My plan was to be like a full-time freelance writer, and then have this DeFi focused newsletter on the side. But then the Defiant started taking up all of my time, and it started to just take off. So I decided to go all in on the Defiant and make it my full-time job. And from then on, it just, the Defiant has grown to become a media company, not just a newsletter. Now we have our website, thedefiant.io, with daily DeFi focused news stories. We have 2 newsletters, a weekly podcast, our YouTube video. And right now we're a team of 12. And yeah, and I think one of the most recognized media brands in crypto, and the only one focused on DeFi and Web3.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing the story, and it's really great. I particularly love like the persistence with the rejection from Bloomberg, and basically saying like, well, you guys might have got that wrong. Like, why don't you try again? And then they gave you another 3 months, and you ended up working there for 8 years. And I'm sure, like you said, they were really glad that they fixed that. And then before that, even I think your first job at El Mercurio in Chile was basically they gave you an offer in like some department that you
Oh
weren't at
yeah,
all interested in, and then you were like, well, no, like try again, and then they gave you what you wanted. So there seems to be like this sort of
that's
this
right.
pattern of really going for what you want. And I think a lot of people too quickly take no for an answer, and sort of let the world, shove them around a bit or whatever. And so it's great to hear these like sort of key inflection points in your life where you could have sort of accepted a role with this newspaper you always wanted to work with, but in a department that you didn't like, and then ended up maybe like going down that path for the rest of your career for all you know. And then, so that's sort of like one big turning point. And then with Bloomberg, it's like you were about to head back home and like who knows what would have happened if you didn't sort of stay in New York at that time, and eventually go to Buenos Aires and all of that. Um, so anyway, I'm curious. There's a bunch of sort of questions that came to mind throughout that, but one right off the bat is when you came up with, you sort of like built the conviction to leave Bloomberg after 8 years, finish your book, planning to sort of write this newsletter on DeFi, but also more so do some like freelance writing. What given that the DeFi sort of came somewhat unexpected and took over, that newsletter actually became the main thing. What did you have planned on the freelance side? Like, were you going to continue to write about a lot of crypto, or also markets, or also even, beyond outside of financial writing? Like, did you have any thoughts on what you were going to do there?
Yeah, so I wanted to write about crypto and tech more broadly,
Mm,
and also markets and finance were kind of the, my main interests.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I did have some like early conversations with TechCrunch, who was interested in maybe having me write like, I don't know, a story every month or something like that. I don't know. I reached out to some media contacts to build out my kind of initial, my budding freelance career, but that didn't really, like, I didn't, I don't think I wrote one freelance story, because I was just like, all through the first half of 2019, I was 100% focused on finishing my book. Like, I really wanted to finish it by the deadline that HarperCollins had given me. And in that time of writing The Infinite Machine, I saw DeFi was just like picking up steam and becoming a thing.
Mm,
And so I don't know, like, maybe by the end of the first half of 2019, I decided that I was gonna go through with this and start this newsletter. And then yeah, like, it just, like, it happened very quickly that I started writing The Defiant, and it was really fun to do. Um, and I was still like between kind of book edits, because that was just like my first draft that I had filed. So I was like editing my book still, and writing The Defiant. So never got around to that freelance career.
yeah, no, it makes total sense. I mean, it's a good problem to have. I guess one of the things that you're working on takes off so fast that you don't have time to do the other thing. But
Mm,
I guess I'm sort of wondering because, like, in telling your story, you talk about sort of, always having written, like, even when you were a kid, and then deciding like, okay, well, journalism sort of like a practical way to work and write for the rest of my life. And then sort of at Northwestern deciding like, well, let's not waste this valuable education. Let's go and sort of study business. I'm wondering if like other areas of writing completely different from what you're focused on today are still, or were ever interesting to you, are still interesting to you, or if you think like outside of the Defiant and your primary focus on DeFi and more broadly, crypto and even more broadly finance and markets, if you would consider, if you have considered or would consider sort of other forms of writing, because I know like your book is, yes, it is crypto focused, but it's really storytelling,
mhm.
like more so than anything else. Like it's not technical, or not really technical at least, and it's sort of a different focus than a lot of other crypto books. And that type of skill set that's required to write that book could easily be applied to any story. I feel like, so I'm curious like if that's something that you think about, or yeah.
Sure, and I'm glad you think so. I I think for nonfiction, I haven't really considered another area, because it makes a lot of sense to continue writing about the thing that I know deeply about, and where my network is, and where my sources are, um, and where I think I have the most value to contribute. So
Mm,
I definitely do want to write more books. I have an idea of what my second book would be on, like, maybe like a part two of the Infinite Machine, but not so direct. Like, it wouldn't be about Ethereum, but
mm,
more broadly about DeFi. Like, I'd like to tell the story of the biggest DeFi protocols, but also in a, like a storytelling kind of way, like
mm,
something that resembles a fiction novel, but is
mm,
telling a true story. That's my, just like my preferred type of writing. And also the type of book that I like to read myself. Um, so that kind of in terms of nonfiction, I think I'll stick with crypto at least for the time being. But I also love to explore at some point fiction writing,
Hmm.
because yeah, like you say, it's um I just enjoy storytelling and I enjoy writing. And that's the kind of writing that I did as a teenager. I wrote stories and poetry and all that stuff in my journals. Um, so I think I'd be really interested to see, to just like explore that side of my, I don't know, writing, or uh see how that goes. But I don't know. It just I feel like it would be kind of in a different life, or like um maybe I have so much to do in crypto still, I feel. Uh, so maybe later on down the line I can explore fiction. I would love to. Like I do have like book ideas, like fiction type book ideas, but I don't know, there's there's no time to do all the projects I want to do.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I hope it's, maybe another chapter more than another life. It would be cool. You'll
Hmm.
have I'll buy the book. So you have at least one
Yeah.
customer, and I'm sure, you've got a big audience. You'd have, I'm sure, a lot. I'm sure the book would do really well. You'd get,
I hope so. Yeah,
published
we'll
and
see.
everything, no problem. So, but I also really like the sound of sort of the Infinite Machine V2, whether or not
Mhm.
it's actually called that or whatever. But like, it makes sense actually. Like, you start with, the story of Ethereum, and that itself is somewhat of a decentralized story, so to speak. It's not quite the same as like sort of the building of a company, so like, or something like that, to compare it. But then this would be even further decentralized in that it's like many organizations, like, I don't know which ones you would sort of choose to cover, but there might be a handful, there might be a dozen, there might be three, somewhere in that range, maybe, where you're sort of like weaving together all of these different people who are building, and these companies and these protocols that are building on Ethereum. It sounds really compelling. And like, I guess it's a little bit it seemed challenging, I guess, from like a timing perspective. It's like you have to, it takes time to write a book.
Mhm.
So that, like, you're not gonna be able to like be at the cutting edge of like what's the latest when you release it, nor do you maybe want to be, because a lot of stuff that's the latest and whatever is like gonna go away anyway. But
Mhm.
it's like kind of funny, like crypto works in these, at least historically, it sort of worked in these, 4-year cycles. And that could sort of translate into like, well, maybe every 4 years you write a book, and it's like not necessarily like at the same, you could sort of determine what part of the hype cycle is like the best part to write the book. It feels like
Mhm.
the last one you were mostly writing, I guess, through like sort of the bull run, and then I don't know if you
No, no,
probably, no.
I was actually, so I pitched the story at the very peak of the bull run in December of 2017, which maybe, helped me just get yeses
Yeah,
all across. So, but then I was writing through the bear market. So I was writing all through 2018 and 2019. And it was like a little, it was not really nerve-wracking, because I don't know, like I really do believe in this stuff. Like
right.
I believe in crypto. I know that it's revolutionary. I know that it's not going anywhere. And same with Ethereum. Like I knew that no matter what, the story would be relevant, because like to me, Ethereum had already made history. Like it was already the first smart contracts blockchain. It had already fueled all the ICO boom of 2017. So that's something that happened. That's, not going away. So even if Ethereum wasn't kind of the blockchain to like win, or, however you want to say it,
It's a part of the
it,
history.
yeah, it's already part of the history. It would still be relevant to tell that story, I thought. So even, as the price kept going down, and people were asking like, are you still writing that Ethereum book? And I am like, of course I am. Like, to me it just like wasn't a question. um but yeah, in terms of a second book, I would take a similar approach. Like I feel like both Ethereum and some of the protocols built on top of Ethereum have been battle tested enough that, they've already made their mark in DeFi, whether they end up being the thing that people use 10 years from now or not. Like, there's, already, it's already pretty clear kind of what the most important DEX is, what the biggest, lending platform is, or like staking, or, there's like these like primitives that have shaped DeFi, and the biggest protocols within those primitives. So yeah, I think like enough time has passed in DeFi that I can already make a confident decision on, what to write about that won't feel outdated 4 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you would basically have like a bear market, bull market, and another bear market sort of to write about
Yeah.
for the next version. So you just I mean, it seems like a pretty good strategy to go out and pitch during the bull run. So you can maybe, time this next one and get your pitch ready to go. I mean, not that you even need to pitch anyone at this point, I'm sure, but it's for a first time author, I guess it's helpful to think of it that way. And then the bear market is probably easier to write into because just like things
Exactly. Yeah.
are more calm, there's not quite as much to cover with your day job, and so that all sort of makes
People
a lot of
have
sense.
are more available for interviews. So yeah.
True, true. Although I will say, doing the podcast, I guess, when did I start this? I started it like before the last bull run, maybe in like early 2020 or mid 2020, summer 2020, and I forget when the bull run actually started, but it's I think a little bit after that, like
Yeah,
2021.
around that time.
Yeah, and so I had no trouble getting crypto guests, like sort of earlier on. And then what I noticed was like 2022, late 2022, 2023, like, yes, people probably had a lot more time, but people just did not want to talk about like crypto
Oh yeah.
basically. So it was like a little bit harder to get guests. But and now it's, now even, right now it doesn't really feel like a bull run, but prices are up, or at least Bitcoin is sort of the one that I track most, I sort of have in my head. It's like up like 2x from a year ago or whatever. So it's like people are, resurfacing and happy to come on podcasts again, which I'm happy about. So I want to actually go back a little bit to what you were talking about with when you first discovered crypto, or at least first started paying it some real attention in Buenos Aires in 2012, 2013-ish.
Yeah.
Very early for, even people who are in 2016 at this point, like reasonably feels kind of like early to crypto. Like the more cycles go by, the more like early is super early, and that's about as early as it gets. And so, um, it's interesting because I've heard this story a couple times from a couple people of like discovering crypto while in Argentina, which is
Mm.
like, this sort of case study and like why crypto matters. So I'm sort of curious to hear more about like, if I don't know if you remember sort of the first piece that you wrote that you mentioned, or various sort of experiences that you had in those very, very early days of, learning about Bitcoin and seeing how it was relevant in the local economy. Maybe not like immediately, like people are using Bitcoin all the time, but just like you're seeing that you can't convert your local currency to dollars anymore. And then on the side, you're seeing people are talking about Bitcoin. It's like, well, this sort of makes a lot of sense. Um,
Yeah.
so we could talk through that initial experience a little bit. And then I'm actually curious, like, to know if that interest persisted for the next like 3 or 4 years, like 2013 to 2017, because it's like a bear market at that point. Bitcoin hadn't like survived all of these bear markets. Like now it's like, okay, another bear market, but it'll be fine. But back then it's like, is this thing like dead? Like, I don't really, it's like harder to have conviction. So I'm curious about that too.
Yeah. So my time in Argentina just changed my perception of money, and also of governments. So I'm from Chile, like I said, and for those who don't have that much context, Chile, and especially back then, because now it's gotten a bit, crazier, but back then, Chile was the most stable country in South America. It was like the good student, it was like
Hmm.
kind of um, capitalist economy, free markets, rule of law, just like friends with the US. And and just like things worked. Like growing up, I never had to worry about the value of the Chilean peso. Like it just was. Um, and then in Argentina, when I got there, like the first thing that people told me was, you need to convert your salary, which we got in Argentine pesos, to dollars right away. Like the first thing you do with your salary, convert it to dollars. And so that was kind of like, I don't know, my first taste of what was to come. And then, so yeah, I started doing that. I started seeing how just inflation impacted just like everyday interactions, how like restaurants had to like constantly be, crossing out prices. Same with like clothing stores, or it was like just like a constant worry about prices going up and up and up, and just like no people just like couldn't keep up with it. And so that was kind of my initial experience with inflation in Argentina, just like people obsessed with the dollar and not having any pesos in their bank unless the very minimum that people need to just like pay everyday expenses, but just like having dollars as soon as they can. And then one day I was at the Bloomberg office, and as always, Cristina Fernandez, the president back then, she always had these kind of she called them cadena nacional, which, how do you translate it? It's like
Like a public announcement, like a
yeah,
national.
like a national broadcast. So
Right.
like they do that, and like every TV channel is set to what she has to say. And so obviously whenever that happened, we covered whatever she said. And she started announcing that from, I think this was like days after her re-election. She said, we're going to ban the purchase of US dollars. And that's it. And so she made that announcement, and I wrote up the headlines and wrote the story. And then I was like, wait, like actually you can't buy dollars anymore? Is that true? And so like I went to my bank account, and what I had a dollar account and a peso account, and you could just like very easily transfer between your accounts. But I remember seeing that option was just like not there anymore. It was just gone from one day to another. And then it was like, okay, so what do I do now with my peso salary that's just going to get eaten away with inflation daily? And there really was no way, like no legal way to access dollars. And this to me was, I don't know, it's just really hard to comprehend. It's like, it's my money, like I earned it. And suddenly this government, that it's their fault that the peso is worth nothing. And they're telling me what I can and can't do with my own money. So I don't know, the whole thing just like really shook me. It made me a lot more libertarian, like, screw the government. They can't tell me what to do. And then, yeah, just like dealing with going to the black market and getting dollars in the black market, like all of that experience. And then, yeah, suddenly, um, actually, an Argentine reporter who wasn't living in Argentina at the time, he told me, hey, like I'm hearing a lot of my friends in Argentina are buying this weird, like digital money called Bitcoin. And so I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And I, started researching, and, like a a journalist would usually do, like you would go to like whatever, like the website, and try to call the CEO. And I was kind of understanding, okay, there's no like one website for Bitcoin. There's no CEO. Like, what is this? So that was just like a really, just like, I remember just a very confusing, first impression of what this thing was. And then obviously, I started, I talked to the, local, like the first local exchanges, like Bitcoin exchanges in Argentina. They were all kind of peer-to-peer sort of exchanges, and, people in the Bitcoin community there. And obviously they explained how this thing worked. And yeah, I just thought it was revolutionary. It's like, okay, there's like money system that doesn't need central banks or governments or countries, or and just like lives independently, and anyone can just buy without having to get permission from anyone. um this happened, like learning about this like right after I had this experience of like being told that I can't buy dollars with my pesos. So that just like made me understand very quickly why Bitcoin and crypto and blockchains were valuable. Yeah. And then the second question was like how
Basically,
that,
like,
yeah.
that's like Bitcoin is presumably at that around that time at least going through this nice sort of bull run, sort of coming
Mhm.
on the map for a broader audience for the first time really ever. And then the prices crash. I don't know exactly the timing of everything off the top of my head, but like
Yeah.
really bad crash to the point where it's like, oh, inevitably most people who found out about it during that time found out about it, new people finding out about it found out about it somewhere along the upgrowth of like, the price going up. And then if they bought in at that point and then it crashes down, it's like, well, I lost 70% of my money on this internet thing that people told me was gonna be cool, but like not that cool. So like, they want out. And so like a lot of people obviously are, get obsessed and they love the concept and they get it and they stick with it. But you can't blame a lot of people for being like, well, that was fun, but that thing's dead now. So I'm curious, like, if you were continually tracking it over the next few years, because it's sort of a long break until the next
Yeah.
bull run, or if it was sort of back of mind for you as you continued with your more sort of like traditional markets and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it was definitely more casual for me. Like for me, yeah, it was like I learned about Bitcoin. I thought it was really cool. Um, I think like as I was doing the research, somebody I think sent me like a very, very tiny, tiny amount. Like it wasn't even like, I don't know, just like for testing, but I lost it. Like, I don't know. Um
Probably like $1 million now or something.
Maybe no, but it really was just like a tiny amount. I don't even remember. I hope it wasn't like $1 million, but I doubt it. No, it was. I remember it's just like very tiny. So I didn't keep that, didn't keep track of that wallet, and yeah, for me it was just like just casually, like in the same way that you would track whatever topic kind of interests you, and maybe you see an article once in a while and you read it.
Mhm.
But that was kind of the extent
It
to which
wasn't
I kind of,
it
yeah.
wasn't taking like a material percentage of your coverage of what you were
No, no,
writing
not
about or
at
anything
all.
like that. Yeah.
No, no, because at the time, like, so I was like the main markets reporter in Argentina at the time, and there was a lot to cover outside of Bitcoin. So it's like currency controls, inflation, the nationalization of the oil company, um, uh, like two debt defaults, and just like there's a lot going on in Argentina. So I was very occupied with like non-crypto markets stuff. So yeah, it was just like I casually kept track of it, but enough that I always thought it was really cool and was always interested. So when the opportunity came again, like in 2017, to write about it, I was like, oh yeah, like I remember this thing was really cool, and now it's taking off again. So I just like jumped at the chance of covering it again.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'm curious, like you said earlier, how much you loved your 4 years yet there, and yet like this political turmoil is happening. That's like sounds not that fun. Like that individual piece of it sounds not that fun to be experiencing. Maybe good though for sort of work to be covering. But I'm
Hmm.
curious, Buenos Aires versus Chile versus New York, these various places that you've lived over the course of your life. How do you like sort of compare and contrast? Like what have you learned about like aspects that you like about like where you like to live?
Oh, interesting question. Okay, so I've lived in obviously Chile, Miami growing up, Buenos Aires, Madrid, and New York. I think from Buenos Aires and then also from Madrid, what I like, one of the biggest takeaways for me was um how to really, I don't know how just like to enjoy life, I guess.
Mm,
um like in Argentina and Spain, it, people prioritize having fun and having uh, just spending time with loved ones very high up. Like and that's very different from, what I had seen in my time in the US before Buenos Aires and and Spain, and after, of course. So yeah, like I've always been very kind of career driven, and in Chile people aren't as social as in Argentina and Spain. So I didn't get that kind of um that from just like growing up in Chile. And then, during my time in Chicago, and then in New York, it was like very much kind of the main thing that you work for. I mean, the main thing that you focus on is your career, and everything kind of falls after that. Um, but then in Argentina and Spain, I learned that there's like this different model of looking at life, where what you prioritize is actually your relationships. And that's how people live life. It's like, okay, you have your job, but that's not the most important thing in your life. And you spend a lot of time with friends and family, and people go out every single day. And just like you're always out with friends. And I don't know, it's just very interesting, especially in Argentina, where, like you said, there's just this um ongoing chaos and crisis all the time. There's like all the time there's some sort of economic crisis or political crisis, but people just like have learned to live with that, and have learned to live with having this like double digit or triple digit inflation, to the point that maybe it even fuels this sense of, let's just have fun. Let's just like spend the money, because it's not going to be worth anything tomorrow anyways. So let's just go out and spend it. And so you see, like the economy could be collapsing, but you go out at night in Buenos Aires, and every single bar and restaurant is full of people.
Hmm.
And people are having fun. And I don't know, like I wouldn't say that I 100% adopted this kind of way of life. Like I continue to be very career driven, and I prioritize that very highly. Um, but it also made me maybe appreciate the importance of not, completely forgetting about relationships and just having fun and enjoying life. And that's very much what the culture in Argentina and Spain is about. Just like, you know, just spending 3 hours at lunch, and having a bottle of wine with friends, and just, enjoying life. I think, that's the one of the most important life lessons for me, from Argentina and Spain. And yeah, but still, like my favorite city in the world continues to be New York. I love it here. Like I said, I just it might be cliche, but I really do think it's the place of opportunity, and I'm very grateful to the US, and to New York, like uh, because of being here. I think is that I was able to make a lot of things happen, just like write my book, and The Defiant, and have like all these connections, and also this drive, just like something about the city that really is inspiring. And you're seeing like so much activity around you, and people are doing interesting things, and everyone has like somewhere to go, that really kind of energizes me. So yeah, I really do love New York for that. It continuously just like inspires me, and like I said before, I have like so many projects in my head of things I want to do, and I think part of that drive and creativity comes from being in a city like this. So yeah, I think those are kind of my favorite things about the places I've lived in.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I sort of I understand where you're coming from with the Buenos Aires thing. It's like I'm like you in that I'm like sort of very driven, and it's useful to put yourself in an environment that emphasizes the other side of it, that like
Mhm.
helps you to find some balance, even if you don't buy all the way into that sort of way of life. It at least sort of helps like, pull you closer towards that and
Yeah.
away from the other extreme you might otherwise sort of like trend towards. And then I think New York is, it's obviously people are super ambitious and working really hard, but there is, I think, some level of, well, I don't know. It's certainly not Buenos Aires. It's not Madrid in terms of like what you're talking about, like prioritizing relationships and, 3-hour lunches and everything like that. But it has its own merits that I totally agree with as well. Like there's just this energy in New York that I personally haven't experienced anywhere else.
Mhm.
And I grew up sort of in the area, and New York was like the first city that I knew, and I sort of thought that all cities were going to be like New York. And then like as I started seeing other cities, I was like, whoa, like wait, no, like this is like a
It's
town.
special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like this other city's like a town. Like New York is like its own sort of
Mhm.
breed. So anyway, that all sort of resonates with me. I think last question, because I know we're coming up on time, but fast forward, coming back to current day, um, I'm curious, what's most interesting to you right now in DeFi or in crypto more broadly, or even outside of it, just things that are sort of interesting that you're following along with. And I also, for me personally, like there's not always something that's interesting to me, like going on. Like sometimes, there's just not that much that I'm really that interested in. And so, if there's nothing going on like right now, like maybe the most recent thing that sort of comes to mind.
Sure. Yeah, so it's funny. I don't think there's a lot actually going on right now in DeFi. It's yeah, we're in this kind of strange bull market, if it is a bull market, because it doesn't feel like one. Um, but in any case, what is interesting to me that I've highlighted recently is just the fact that we can confidently say, or at least I feel like I can confidently say that decentralized finance actually works. Like I think we're at a place now where that's that's not in doubt anymore, and I think that's massive. There's this alternate financial system that is running on Ethereum and Solana bit and other blockchains that just allows people to transact in this permissionless way, and again it can't be stopped, and it actually works. And I think that's something that shouldn't be taken for granted, or shouldn't be underestimated, because just like maybe um 5 to 7 years ago, that wasn't the case. Like you didn't have all this like financial infrastructure. Like right now, you can trade indexes, you can make global international payments with different wallets. Um, you can lend crypto to earn yield. You can borrow crypto against collateral. Um, uh, and you can borrow stable coins that keep their value to the dollar. Like all these things I think are just like are huge achievements in the blockchain industry, um, and they've been battle tested. So we've gone through like multiple crashes across crypto, like Luna, FTX, just the whole bear market. Well,
Just the macro economy,
the
basically, the whole world, like sort of having these sudden dips with the Japan thing, and then
right,
prior to that with the
right,
US banking thing. And so
yeah, the U.S. banking thing where USDC depegged for briefly, right, and now
that was a
the
little
yen carry trade.
that was a
Yeah,
little nerve-wracking with the USDC.
definitely.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
wasn't like a great day or
No,
a great
no, it
thing.
wasn't. It wasn't. But through all of those cases, DeFi just kept working at a time where it wasn't the case for traditional finance or for fintech. Like in all these like moments where there's been really high volatility, Robinhood has stopped trading, or you have banks who stop withdrawals, and all of these examples of traditional finance and fintech just not delivering. And DeFi has just kept working. And, DEXs have always been up and running, lenders, like all of this financial infrastructure has delivered in the thing that they said that they are supposed to do. So I think, that's really important. That's a really important thing to point out. And it's been interesting to see, like this week, there was this discussion stemming from Vitalik saying that, he thinks more focus should be put on other applications. And to me, like that's pretty wild. Like I think DeFi and finance is the main use case for blockchains, and other applications will come after that. But I think that DeFi is on its way, but hasn't arrived yet. Like it hasn't replaced finance, not by a long shot. Like it's still like super niche. So to me, it's like, okay, like we know that DeFi works, and now it's about just like getting it to go mainstream. So I don't know. That's kind of what's been on my mind and interesting in things I'm interested in.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. And I'm glad I did the caveat with like if there's nothing particularly going on right now at this moment, because the general trend of, DeFi coming out of sort of nowhere really not that long ago and now just working isn't necessarily like a hot, interesting story or something, but like it's interesting and like people, it's underrated. And fortunately it is your, main focus of what you do every day. And so I think it's a great position to be in. And to your point, earlier on, like when I think of like a crypto native media outlet or like a crypto focused media outlet, like I think the Defiant has to be on the top of like everyone's list. It's just there's still not that many like pure crypto focused news outlets, or at least not that many that are sort of like feel sort of like institutions almost. And I know, institutions these days get like a pretty bad rap, and maybe for good reason, but not the negative kind of institution, just like sort of a established
hopefully
source.
Trusted.
Exactly. And because there's always, everything on the Twitter timeline or whatever. So anyway,
that's great to hear. No, I really thank you for saying that. We put so much effort into into what we do, and just providing just like high quality stories, but it's also about curating the stories that we cover, because crypto can be pretty noisy, and there's just like a lot going on. So what our job at the Defiant isn't only to provide really high quality coverage, but also to curate all the noise in crypto and just tell you, okay, this is actually what matters.
right.
So hopefully people can check it out.
Yeah, not just to cover things the right way, but to cover the right things the right way. And that's
Exactly, yeah.
very challenging. So yeah, that's a good place to close. Where do, well, first of all, thank you for coming on again. I really appreciate the time and really enjoyed the conversation. Where can people go and, where do you want to send them to follow you and the Defiant and everything moving forward?
Yeah, so people can follow me at Camila Russo on Twitter, and follow the Defiant at Defiant News, and our website is thedefiant.io.
Awesome. And I saw the Trump's tried to take your
Oh, yeah.
guys' little hashtag there for a minute, but I think you guys hopefully will maintain the the brand.
The only Defiant. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. This was great.